welcome everyone. Looks like we've got about 35 people on the call. Really appreciate your participation. Again, my name is Wendy Gramza. For those of you I might not know, I am President and CEO of the Toledo Chamber. So again, welcome. Want to introduce a couple of guests that are on the phone. Some of them will be speaking. Should start first and foremost with my boss. Chairman of our board, Bill McDonald from PNC Bank, has joined us on the call. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. We also have, who we'll hear from them in just a second, but we have Mayor Wade Kapsakevich from the City of Toledo, Sandy Spang from the City of Toledo, Tina Skeldon-Wozniak from Lucas County Commissioners, and we also have two people from the Lucas County Health Department, Eileen Thompson and Barb Jordan. And then we also have Tom Balzer, who is President and CEO of the Ohio Trucking Association and Ohio Association of Movers. And again, some of those folks will be speaking in just a moment. But at this time, let me turn it over to our elected officials to make a few welcoming comments. Mayor?
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you everyone for joining this call this morning. This might be maybe the fourth similar call that the Chamber has pulled together over the last month or so. And I just can't help myself from putting a plug in for the Chamber. I don't know how many of the 35 people who are on this call are members, but you all should be. In this difficult time, the Chamber has hosted conversations like this with a number of different sectors. There was a barber shop and beauty salon call and a restaurant call, and now this one around the transportation related jobs. And just the information has been so invaluable as we try to understand the COVID crisis and what it means for our economy and opening it back up. So I guess the first thing I would say, I hope you appreciate the Chamber and its leadership in hosting these meetings. I think you'll find that they're valuable. From the perspective of the city, we're excited to have our economy opening back up after, to 10, 12 awkward weeks of stay-at-home orders and partial stay-at-home orders. And, it's kind of confusing to understand what it all means. But things are, opening back up, and we, the city, continue to make, I think, some encouraging economic development news, including on a project that should be important to this group. And I'm talking about our Amazon location at the old Southwick. That is, we thought it was going to be done by fall. COVID delayed us a little bit, but I still think we'll be done by 2020. We just closed on that property. Construction has already begun if you drive over there. And when that is up, working like it should, there should be a lot of trucks moving in and out and helping commerce occur in our community. So there's other services the city offers, but I think I'll save those for any questions if we have them. I just wanted to really welcome everyone here and say we're looking forward to working together.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Tina?
Hey, thank you. Hello, everybody. It's good to be with you. Hello, Chairman McDonald. It's always a treat to see you as well. I am excited to join Wade, and I want to thank the Chamber as well. You've been such a critical partner to the Emergency Operations Center, which I think you all know is tasked with the responsibility to open and handle the COVID crisis, which we've all been living through in the last several months. So your partnership is, everyone knows it's obvious. You turn to the Chamber to help with the business reopening and the kinds of things that you've all been dealing with. So thank you again for all your hard work on that in that area. Bottom line, just interesting to note, there's 2,300 current COVID cases as of 3 p.m. yesterday, and the day before there was 2,100. So they're still ticking up a bit, but the good news is overall, there's only 50 people in the hospital with COVID-related illness. So the good news is we're still in a better shape than many cities that have across the country seen an uptick. We also wanted to, I also wanted to just mention briefly, Lucas County is still seeing about 23.7% unemployment, and the city of Toledo is at about 26.4%, and we should watch those numbers change as we open up and get people back to work and get more businesses, able to deal with the COVID, transition responsibilities in order to get people back to work. I don't know if you're going to go into things like this, but if you are still looking for PPE equipment, you can Google Ohio Repurposing Project, which is a way to obtain the proper gowns and dividers and hand sanitizers and things like that for businesses. So I wanted to be sure if those questions come up between us all on this call, I'm sure we can handle that. But I also wanted to mention if some of the logistics and groups that are looking for CDL drivers, we can still help with the training dollars for those workers. So feel free to contact us. And again, I'll have numbers and available ways in which you can reach the Ohio Means Jobs program here locally to help train workers. As I know that's an ongoing issue. Also wanted to share that too often we don't share the opportunity for training dollars for employees. Employers can access on-the-job training dollars to receive approximately 50% of the wages that you need to pay in order to get a worker trained in their new employment opportunity. So those on-the-job training dollars are available through our workforce development program here locally. And then should you have a worker that you want to upskill that worker to do a different job, you also are available for those dollars during the training period, again, available locally to give them new dollars and new opportunities to do a new job within your organization. So we're here standing ready to be your partner to get people linked to those resources and get your company linked to have access to those dollars that are available here for everybody to have a full workforce. So thank you for the opportunity, and I'm here to answer questions as well. It's good to see you.
Great, thank you, Tina. Really appreciate that good information. I think we're going to move along. I'm going to share my screen and show you a few things that we have available through our website. Bear with me just a minute. And we're really about ready to shift from a lot of the COVID-related information that we've been providing and really shift to a moving forward, what businesses should be looking at in terms of economic recovery, what that means for your business, opportunities to grow your business, in this environment. So we're really making that shift for businesses to think forward and moving forward. But again, a lot of resources on ToledoChamber.com that you would want to go to. That's how you registered for this event. So I'm assuming everyone figured at least how to get that far, but wanted to show you that besides our Northwest Ohio Reboot initiative, we do have a health department guide for reopening checklists. I know a lot of you probably were considered deemed essential, so if you wanted to stay open during the stay-at-home order, you could. Maybe some of you did, some of you didn't, so that might not necessarily be applicable. But even during the open phase, so this is a little counterintuitive, but there are more rules now for reopening than there were when essential businesses were open during the shutdown. So you want to make sure that you're making that shift, and even though you were an essential business, that you still have all the proper protocol in place that's being required of businesses. So that's a great place to check there. If you click on the Reboot initiative, this is where you can reach our staff for assistance. And again, as you talk to others, vendors, customers, through our Small Business Development Center, we have no cost, confidential, one-on-one consulting with a team of professionals. They spend a lot of time helping people start businesses, but also spend a lot of time with existing businesses who are having a challenge or are even in a growth mode. So would encourage you to take advantage of that as well. And again, and you can contact the SBDC right here on this link. This is also a great place to, again, we have the health department checklist, also a great place on the webinar page, not only see the webinars that the chamber is presenting, but also webinars they're being presented by our Reboot partners. Now I'll show you that group in a moment, but we also have, I know we have at least one member of our Reboot partners, that's Bob Bethel from the Employers Association. So welcome, Bob. Again, they have a wealth of information over at the EA. Personal protective equipment that the commissioner mentioned, we do, if you check on or click on this icon, you will find local sources for PPE equipment, so you want to check that out. Again, the member resources page, we also have a number of information there. And then we have the, excuse me, William Vaughan PPP calculator. You click on this, this helps you figure out if you were a recipient of PPP funding through the SBA. This helps you figure out what you will have to pay back and what you will not. So that's very important as well. Again, some more COVID business resource information. And then our business reboot policy recommendations. I mean, I know that the Ohio Trucking Association certainly is working on the industry's behalf, but we have taken our entire public policy agenda and really focused it on the things that were important as we reboot our economy. So want to take a look at that. And then are the logos of all of our partners in the Reboot initiative. So again, a lot of our natural partners that we work with anyway, but we really appreciate their support of this Reboot initiative. Any questions that I can answer about that? Okay, if not, I would also just mention that right before the pandemic and a lot of the closures, we were on a pretty fast track to create some industry sector partnerships, and transportation and logistics was one of them. Some of you I know were part of some conversations with us. We had applied for a grant from the state of Ohio to help us manage that. Again, that has been put on pause. But we're hoping that will come to fruition here in the coming months. And again, that is really meant to bring the industry together, the regional industry together, and focus on issues and solutions to the labor shortage that you are all experiencing. That's changed a little bit, but I think that's probably a short-term issue. But again, I am really looking forward to hearing from some of you in terms of what you're seeing in your industry, and even more important, the challenges and opportunities that you think you will have in the future. So at this point, I want to turn it over. I think, Julie, give me a nod. Did we ask our health department folks to say a few words? You're on mute.
They will be here for the availability to answer questions that are health department related when the Q&A comes up. So
okay, great. Yeah, I know since this group, all of our other roundtables, again, we talked to restaurants and daycares, and that was all groups that were being prepared to reopen. So a little bit different than this call. So I will just go ahead then and turn it over to Tom Balzer, President and CEO of the Ohio Trucking Association and Ohio Association of Movers.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. I'm going to share my screen and walk through some slides real quick on some statistics that we found leading into 2019 prior to the pandemic, and then some of the research that we've done, and then some other conversation going forward. This is obviously something that we've been watching very closely, and something that we've been heavily involved in, and was very grateful that the administration allowed trucking to stay essential. We always knew that we were essential, regardless of a pandemic or not, but it became very important during this time that we keep the wheels rolling to make sure that supplies got put into place. And obviously there was some huge supply chain disruption that went without saying. We can talk a little bit about that as well, but my intent was to provide you some data that we've collected, some data points that we've collected over the course of this, and then to move forward and then allow more question and answers on that side. So going from 2018 into 2019, we saw some pretty significant drops in spot market loads and contract loads that we were anticipating, but 2019 was not a great year in comparison to 2018 and 2017. So we were already kind of behind the 8 ball, if you will, as an industry going into 2020. So with the less than truckload metrics, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with that term, less than truckload are usually shipments less than 10,000 pounds that get aggregated and moved, as opposed to an entire truckload or full trailer full of product. So saw 2019 and the LTL world was down, and usually where you see LTL spike is when you have smaller shipments, companies that are moving smaller amounts of goods that need that expediency to get them through without having to take up the entire trailer's load of worth. So usually coming out of economic downturns, we see the LTL market kind of spike a little bit. So in 2019, things were settling in pretty well on that end. But when you take a look at the 2018 versus 2019 shipment index, wherever you are, but especially in the Midwest, we saw a huge decrease in the number of shipments from 2018 to 2019. So like I said, going into 2020, not a great scenario that we saw moving forward, but we did see some tractor changes in the year-over-year changes in the number of tractors for the last 3 years. And what that set up was, as the pandemic hit and the economy came to a screeching halt, we did have this excess capacity, and then we added to it in the last 3 years. So that really kind of set up a scenario that really didn't play well for the industry. I know a lot of people probably saw a lot of the things out there, Girl Scout buying cookies for truck drivers, and we have no toilet paper, and we've got no paper towels. But the industry as a whole saw a huge impact on the number of loads that we had moving forward. But we did see that slowdown in tractor sales in 2020. So as well as a drop in the pricing that we have. So we went out and we started our own economic survey, and it was a really short survey, asked literally 5 questions, but really what we wanted to know was year over year, the number of loads that you had, were they up, were they down, and how much were they up and down? And each one of these bars represents a week. So we have 7 weeks here worth of data. But what you see is that huge drops. In fact, when we first started this, we actually asked over 30% as our top end number of load drops, as far as 30% or greater. And we actually had to change that to down 50%. We had some anecdotal information coming from some carriers that said that their loads were off by 80% or more. So huge drops depending on what sector of the industry you're in. If you were hauling fuel and everyone was locked down and no one was driving anywhere, and fuel sales basically fell off a cliff, you basically went from having a pretty budding business to nothing. And so it was a huge drop that we saw in the number of loads, and still continue to see. If you see the orange line, which is May 11th through May 17th, we saw a 28.6% drop between 30 and 50% of the number of loads year over year. So then we asked about week over week, what were your weeks looking like? And the nice part we're seeing here in this process is that things are starting to come back. There is some growth. It is not a dynamic growth. If you look at the up over 20%, which is we anticipate as things start revving back up that that number will grow significantly. But we're not seeing these huge jumps in the number of loads that we have. And there's a couple things that played into this. One of the things is I think a lot of manufacturers played a smart game in that they got a lot of inventory in early so that when they would restart, they could restart immediately and have the raw product there that they could be able to put that into place. But we're not seeing yet the volume of growth that we'd like to see in the industry moving forward. The interesting part is that we do have a lot of optimism in the industry, in that we asked, what do you anticipate next week to look like? And so we do see some increases in percentages, not significant, but in the 5 to 20, up over 5%, and then the flat. But the interesting part is when you take a look at this in comparison to what the actual is, that we're still off, that we're anticipating loads to pick up next week, but the reality is they're just not. One thing that we did start asking was the week over week number of employees that you have. And one of the big concerns in the industry has been the availability of drivers, and what level of asset they are to the company. And we all know that drivers are in short supply, that good drivers are in short supply, that we really need to bring people into the industry in that particular sector of the industry, as well as the technician side. So what we did see was, even though we saw businesses down 50 to 80%, that businesses did their best, or trucking companies did their best to keep their employees on staff. And part of that was PPP, but the other part is the realization of being able to keep these drivers employed. And one of the interesting parts about the industry is if we were to furlough drivers and they were off of work for 30 days or more, you have to drug test them to bring them back in between, because if they've been off for more than 30 days, the federal requirements will require that. And one of the challenges is if you have this pandemic, do these drivers want to go into a medical facility to do a drug test? And so we did see a lot of sectors of the industry really trying to keep drivers employed, their staff employed, whether that be from home or from the office. But as an essential business, we were allowed to continue to operate, and we did see that. One of the interesting statistics that I don't think a lot of people thought of in this is this is back in March and April, this is the vehicle miles traveled by the different districts in the state of Ohio. And usually we see a growth in that, especially coming into the spring. We saw districts down 60+% on average. So the statewide, we saw drops in the number of vehicle miles traveled. This is both trucks and cars by 59 to 58%. And the interesting part about that is that I think that one of the challenges I think all communities need to take a look at is this is going to have a huge impact on highway funding and transportation funding for every community that pulls off of the fuel tax. That's the primary revenue generator for road funding is the fuel tax piece. And when you have a 50 to 60% drop in the number of vehicle miles traveled, obviously people are buying less fuel. So you're going to generate less revenue coming in for that road funding. And we know how critical infrastructure is, not only the trucking industry, but to the economy. And so that is going to change that dynamic pretty significantly, that lawmakers are going to have to take a pretty significant look at moving forward. On the good side, people driving less, significant drop in the number of fatalities per month that we've seen in the state. And less cars on the road, less fatalities that we have. So that is a growing trend, and that's why you also see a lot of the insurance companies moving forward to provide discounts to their companies. So obviously there's a gigantic switch in how people get their goods, and we've seen that in this pandemic. When you take a look at Amazons and these home grocery delivery services, and that side of the business is people are buying different. They're getting their supplies differently, and that's changing the supply chain pretty dramatically. And then the other pieces that we don't know is the way people work going forward. You know, we've spent the last 2 months working from home. We have all become experts at Zoom and GoToMeeting and all these other platforms. Is that going to continue to be a trend? Are people going to continue to work from home? And what does that mean for the economy? What does that mean for the restaurant industry? What does that mean for, you know, the fuel side of it? There is a lot of unanswered questions when it comes to moving forward of what the impact of this all is and how businesses adapt to that moving forward. So you know, that's a challenging dynamic that we're not really sure of. You know, I've been to the stores a number of times, and it's gotten to be one of those scenarios where, you know, is the cost benefit there? I mean, I've always enjoyed shopping, but you know, it's kind of also nice to have this stuff delivered to me. So so that's going to be the interesting part going forward, is how people are going to get their goods and what that means for the supply chain. So obviously a big focus on drivers, you know, Girl Scout cookies, which good for them for being very entrepreneurial in that fact, to utilize this opportunity to have people use you know, their compassion for the truck drivers and the job they're doing to sell their Girl Scout cookies. I hope they actually won this year on that deal. So so that's, you know, that's kind of the interesting part that we have is we've seen this long trend by the industry of dealing with drivers and, you know, the public perception of being a truck driver. Now they have been seen as the heroes that they are. You know, how does that relate to getting people into the industry? And that'll be an interesting dynamic moving forward as if we can get more drivers, more technicians, more folks into those type industries, especially since they were always allowed to stay open. And people saw how vital they were to the economy, that, you know, there's a lot of people out there whose jobs they thought were going to be there tomorrow that weren't. And they are now looking for a career search or a career change, and what do they choose to be able to do that? So, you know, Tina had talked a little bit about unemployment insurance, and that's one thing that we are extremely concerned about is the volume of cash, which we don't have, that is being spent not only by the state of North Dakota or state of Ohio and the federal government, is unbelievable. I mean, every state is doing this. The state of Ohio, that change of eliminating the 1 week waiting period, which has been a standard in the unemployment insurance game for a very long time, that change in the 1 week waiting period will cost the state of Ohio potentially up to $500 million. That one change will hit UI for $500 million. We spend the trillions of dollars on UI, and it's only going to continue to get worse. You know, we've got a lot of industries, hotel and lodging being one of them, restaurants being another one, that are not coming back with any expediency. You know, yes, the economy's open, apparently, but it's just not really going to ramp up that way. And that's, you know, that's the interesting part, is I think that you know, people believe the doors are open, but we're not seeing it. You know, the people are being very cautious in that. I think as the weather changes, people are going to, you know, get out more. But, you know, people are still being extremely cautious about this because we get so much conflicting information. So, you know, it's gonna be interesting to see how things unfold. But, you know, the trucking industry obviously took a big hit, you know, across all sectors. I think everybody thought we were doing well because we were restocking toilet paper at record levels, but that only lasted so long. So there's a lot of pieces in there that play into that. And interestingly enough, just because you were hauling chickens didn't mean that when the chicken shortage hit that you were all of a sudden busy, because there's different sectors of folks who haul chickens or different products that may have supplied grocery stores who did great, but if you were hauling to restaurants, you weren't doing well. But we are seeing some signs of some good things that are happening. Milk prices have skyrocketed. which is a good thing. There's finally, for once, a shortage of cheese, which we believe to have to do with the restaurant industry coming back online. So, so it's going to be some rocky roads coming ahead. Our economists are telling us that things will not get back to the levels they were pre-COVID until Q3 of 2021. So we're gonna have to buckle in for the long haul on this, and just kind of see how it comes going forward. So.
Thank you. We did have a few questions that came in through the chat and a few that came in through the registration. So we'll go through those. And I think one of the first ones that we had asked several times, and maybe our friends who are on from the health department can sort of answer this one as well. There were some questions regarding actually their office spaces and steps that need to be taken to adhere to reopening standards for their office spaces, and when everybody can be fully back. So maybe that's something that Barbara can answer from the health department.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. You know, people can go back to work, but the one thing we want to remember is to ask everybody to socially distance. And I know at the health department, we are wearing masks. And so I would tell people to wear a mask. Try to eliminate any surfaces where people would mutually be able to touch them. Like we have kept our doors open so they wouldn't have to touch things. And then we continually try to wipe down our desk and our phones and all of our surfaces.
I think that answers several questions that we had on that. Tom, maybe this is something that you can address a little bit further. One of the questions, or I should say concerns that we had come in was that with people are talking about a potential spike and what things might look like, or if the government shuts things down again, if we all of a sudden do get put on another stay at home because we have a fall spike that some folks are talking about.
This is one of those moments where I know I'm being recorded, so I have to choose my words carefully. I guess my first thought is I would hope that we've learned a lot from this exercise we went through the last 2 months about how to proceed if there is a spike this fall again. And hopefully the research will come out and we'll get a better understanding about COVID and its potential. You know, I think that that's been one of the challenging parts that the industry has dealt with is, you know, we've had conflicting reports from CDC about, you know, asymptomatic transmission and, you know, the surface piece. You know, one thing that we've done is we partnered with a group and they have developed a product called BioShield, which actually you spray onto all of your surfaces and it creates these little microscopic spikes that kills all the germs on contact. So, you know, do we have product development that helps mitigate that? You know, I think that at least my understanding of the shutdown was to buy the medical community some time to get their things squared up because of the potential draw on the resources that are there. You know, it's the hope that now we know this is out there, we know it's coming, we know we will not have a vaccine that is available for at least a year, that if there is this fall spike that everyone is talking about and has been talking about for months, that we can properly prepare ourselves for that and hopefully have some product development, hopefully have some new standards moving forward that people understand better, and we're not being so reactive to things moving forward. So, you know, will there be a spike in the fall? You know, I may have went to college as long as a doctor, but I'm not one. So The interesting part is we need to really take the time that we have in this summer, utilize that effectively, take a look at the research, take a look at to see how effective it was, take a look at other countries, other states, how they did, and what that impact is on the economy. That, the interesting part is I don't truly believe that anyone is taking a look at what the complete impact is on what the shutdown actually did to the economy. And we won't know for a while, but we had moving into COVID, we had the longest stretch of economic growth that this country has seen in decades. And we brought it to a screeching halt in the matter of weeks. So we need to be very cautious in that moving forward. We need to provide a little bit more consistency in that piece. This is the one thing that the chamber does, that we do, is we facilitate connections between people. And Zoom is great, but the fact that we can't put more than 10 people in the room to have conversations like this, but and interestingly enough, I hope I don't get myself in trouble or offend anybody by this, but we'll allow hundreds of people in the streets to be standing shoulder to shoulder for a good cause, but we can't put 10 people in a room to have a conversation like this. It is challenging to deal with. Is what's that consistency, and how do we really know what it is moving forward? So that's a long way to saying is I hope we learn from what we've done and what we have done in the last 2 months.
We did have a question come in over the chat. If you could touch on the volume statistics for drayage carriers and how that has been affected due to COVID.
Drayage being intermodal, if I'm going to make that assumption. So obviously intermodal, given its international ties, has been probably hit the hardest, other than fuel, especially because the ports got shut down, the shipments got shut down. There was huge concern of bringing product in from China with the origination of this. So the interesting part is they're probably one of the ones that are in the down 80% load side of it. I don't have any specific intermodal and drayage and container statistics, but I do have some anecdotal stuff where I've talked to some pretty large container providers, and their businesses is down 80%, 70%, and really doesn't look like it's coming back anytime soon. But the interesting part is when you take a look at the quote unquote new economy with the Amazons of the worlds and the Walmart.coms and those kind of product delivery, a lot of that is reliant on freight coming from international ports. So as those side of the businesses start ramping back up, we are going to see that sector grow. But yeah, intermodal got hit really hard. They're probably one of the top 2 or 3 sectors of the industry they got the worst of it.
We did have a question from somebody that they obviously did not shut down, but had concerns regarding the PPP program and qualification requirements. I would say if you would go to our website that Wendy was showing you earlier on this, we have several experts in that field who are hosting webinars on those this week. We have one that's recorded there that we did last week. And then we have one coming up on Monday that actually addresses the changes that happened with the signing of the legislation last week. So all of those resources are on our website to talk about those. And feel free to give me a call if you have questions about any of those specific websites or connections that I can help you make on those experts. Anybody in our Small Business Development Center can do that for you as well. We did have—
Julie, I would also say that you probably want to check with your accountant and or your banker. I know that they're doing a lot of webinars as well as I'm sure that they would talk to you individually. I think the change in legislation that we saw was something that I know that we were lobbying for, as a lot of other business organizations were. That was to extend some things out to give people more time. So I think that was all good legislation.
Yep. The last thing that I had that came in was actually, we did ask for folks to also share maybe some best practices that they had been doing, and somebody had shared that they're actually doing a lot of renegotiating of pricing with their vendors. They implemented standards and procedures, including installing new furnace filtering systems and UV lighting. So a couple things there. So if anybody else has anything like that that is a best practice that they've been working on, you can feel free to share that or put it in the chat when we save these webinars and then send them back out to you. Whatever we collect in the chat, we share out as a resource as well.
Are there any other questions or comments again that folks would like to make? You can either raise your hand and Julie will call on you, ask a question in the chat room, or you can take yourself off mute and start talking. That works too. Anyone? Anyone want to share kind of what you're seeing, you know, with your company in particular? Maybe something that either supports or maybe is a little different than what we heard from Tom. Quiet group today.
It is a quiet group.
I was hoping somebody was going to say that their business was absolutely booming. And we didn't see that. There were sectors of the trucking industry that were absolutely booming. I've got one member of mine who provides raw product to Gojo. He can't keep enough people on staff. I mean, we're, you know, just really depends on where you are at and what, you know, at the particular moment and who you were servicing, who your customers were. He was able to shift all of his employees over to the one Gojo account because, you know, his hand sanitizer is became the golden child of this. You know, it was amazing how they just couldn't keep up with the demand.
Tom, let me ask you too, would there be, because a lot of this really is counterintuitive. You would think that, you know, again, with, you know, orders up, and I know every time I try to order anything online, everything's sold out. You know, things were taking a bit longer to get processed, but there was this thought that, well, you know, trucking is probably doing pretty well. And specifically, what about the grocery sector? I mean, you know, probably the larger groceries probably have their own trucks, but is maybe that where trucking has spiked with the stores that have their own trucking fleet?
Yeah, I mean, we saw some, obviously there's certain sectors of the industry, grocery being one, but interestingly enough, that had some ebbs and flows. You know, it's amazing to me what people latch onto in times of need, right? So if you were hauling paper product for P&G, yeah, you were probably doing very well for a short time. You know, what we saw early on was this huge run on meat. And then, you know, I tell this story, it's an anecdotal story, but, you know, I went to the grocery store by my house and they had no chicken. And I came back 3 days later and they had chicken that looked like it was butchered with a chainsaw. And then a week after that, that same shipment of chicken is on sale for like 39 cents a pound. I mean, you could have picked up whole chickens for like $2. And that was the issue is that you have this huge buy, people, then the industry turns and provides, you know, the supply that they need. So they ramp everything up. And then all of a sudden no one's buying because they overbought. Well, then, you know, so then the freight spikes and then comes back down. And then, so we saw that. You know, the stories that I'm hearing from some companies like Rogue Fitness here in Ohio and Columbus, they are, last I heard, they were 46,000 orders behind. That people were buying fitness equipment for their home use, and there were 46,000 orders behind. So they were shipping out like crazy. So when you saw it on the package side, so UPS, FedEx, DHL, Amazon's piece, you saw some pretty significant spikes in freight on those small package home delivery piece. And so yes, there is that growth, and that'll be the interesting part is as we watch this is what's the sustainability of that? Do people get accustomed to that type and level of service, and then that's how they shop moving forward. The interesting part is that I always remind people when they talk about, when they're selling product or they're talking about, Amazon's or whatever other company is that offer what's called free shipping, right? There's no such thing as free shipping. Someone's paying for it along the way. But we get into this mindset, well, if the shipping's free and returns are free. Well, so that obviously churns, someone's paying for that along the way. So that'll be the interesting part is to watch this, 3 months from now to see what that level of service in Q4 in 2019 was for package delivery and at-home delivery, and then what Q1 and now Q2 of 2020 represents as far as that percentage of business. So yeah, there's been some sectors of the industry that are just absolutely just beyond busy, depending on what they're doing. But that is pretty fleeting. It's a small percentage. And most of this of this industry is so dependent on the economy. Trucking is very dependent on construction. That's one thing that we did see that was good is that home sales may have taken a dip momentarily, but they didn't really fall off like other sectors of the economy did. So we did see that piece, but we talked a little bit about the availability of road construction money. Road construction represents a very large portion of the economy, and construction jobs represent a large portion of the economy. And if that money is not there, that the cities, the townships, the counties, the state, the feds don't have the money to spend on road construction this summer because of the drop in the fuel sales, that's going to have a significant impact on that particular sector of the industry. So there's a lot of industries as well that are going to feel the lag effects of what has happened this spring.
Great, thank you. I also think an interesting thing that I didn't think of was, again, the perception of truck drivers as heroes, delivering the things that folks need. I think that's something that we'll think about in our ISP, and I'm sure that the Trucking Association will think about how we can really capitalize on that to help recruit drivers and people to the industry.
Yeah, we've been trying to figure out that way to people to take a look at truck driving as a career choice. And I think a lot of people look at that as a job and it's just something temporary. And I remember when I got my CDL, one of my buddies who drives truck turned to me and says, well, now you got a fallback plan. I said, what do you mean? He goes, now, if your career goes to crap, you've got something to do. And I'm like, if we're looking at CDL as a fallback plan, then we got a problem. If a driver's mentality is that this is now my fallback, we got a problem. And so, we have done what we could to talk about truck driving as a career, to talk about some of the, the salary availability, the availability of, the benefit side of it, the availability to almost always have a job. Even through COVID, there was a lot of drivers, they continue to roll. So, that is something that is something that we have pushed out publicly, but sometimes it takes that big push, some of that, that side of it, the touchy-feely side of it, where people look at it being a truck driver as a hero, being thanked for their, for what they do, is that push. So the hope is that we see that, we've done some things or trying to do some things legislatively to help people make that career transition, and being able to move that forward. And some trucking companies to be able to provide that finishing, to be able to get them in the industry and lock them in. So yeah, there is a big push for drivers. Yes, there is some initial reports that driver shortage has gone away because of this, but I think that's very short-lived, if at all. So, I think that there's a lot of opportunity there to capitalize on the goodwill that was generated by this.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Julie, do you have any other questions in the chat room?
I have no other questions and I have no hands raised.
Okay. We're just 7 minutes early from when we're going to stop anyway, so I think that's a good thing. Again, thank you all so much for what you do, for being patient and working hard to keep our economy moving forward. We really appreciate it. I'm very interested next week. I think it's next week. We have a call with some of the entertainment venues, and I'll admit I was looking a little at social media while we were talking the last hour, and saw that Cedar Point is opening, but you must wear masks at all times, even on the rides, and people are really freaking out about that. So it's going to be very interesting to talk to those folks, about how they're planning to manage through that. I think you made a great point about the economy's opening slowly. I think that's partly because there are people who are not comfortable coming out no matter what you do. And then these guidelines are really, in a lot of cases, keeping others away just because it's just not the same experience. I don't know if any of you have been in a bar or restaurant, but it's just not the same experience. And we're going to support those folks. But bar stools are gone and tables are only half filled. So it's just not the same experience. So I think that you've got two sides of that are keeping people away, really for two very different reasons. But that's certainly something that we can't influence here today, but we'll just have to keep doing the best that we can. So appreciate you being here.
Wendy,
yes.
We did have one hand raised here just a second ago. So I'm going to unmute Dave to go ahead and ask his question or make his comment.
Awesome.
Hi, yeah, thank you very much. This is an excellent forum, and I do appreciate you guys putting this together. I did want to add to Tom's point a little bit about some businesses I'm involved in and a couple of points. Armada Logistics, which we're over on Southwick Boulevard, is primarily a freight brokerage company. And with that being said, we obviously heavily segmented in the automotive business, did see a huge downturn in the month of April, where March was a fantastic month for us and May came back really strong. But I do want to make one point about with all the PPP money and so forth, there's a lot of drivers out there that have taken themselves off the road because they're making more on unemployment than they're making driving. That's one point I want to make. And then the other point I want to make is that another business I'm involved in, a partner and so forth, is called Freight Technologies. And we are just absolutely booming. We are like the Amazon or the Uber of small package. And we're up over 300% right now. So just wanted to add that. We just took on the Chicago market and it's just going nuts right now for us. So it's been a wonderful expansion. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, David. That is a really good point about the unemployment. I think that for retail bars and restaurants, that's another reason you're not seeing some of them reopen because it's very tough to get employees back to work. And I know you're supposed to, if you call them back to work and they refuse, you're supposed to turn them in, so to speak. I don't think that's really been a very popular for business owners to do. You can pretty much guarantee you will not get that person back, I think, if you probably do that. So the business owners I talk to aren't really interested in going that route. So hopefully at the end of July, beginning of August, when that goes away, assuming that it's not extended, I think you'll see a lot more people out in the workforce.
Well, the interesting part is that one of the other conversations that I've had with some folks at the Restaurant Association is that a lot of these businesses only have enough money in the bank to do this once. And I think that there's a fear by business that I'm going to try to restart. So I'm going to restock my shelves, restock my kitchens, whatever. And then we're going to have another shutdown, or business isn't going to come back fast enough. So I think a lot of these small businesses are very strategically taking a look at, what their cash flow situation is, how much they have in the bank, and what it's going to actually take to restart, and waiting for the economy to hit a certain level before they use that. And I applaud them for understanding their metrics well enough to know how much money they've got, the availability of the cash that they've got or credit that they have, that they can strategically use those resources to open things back up. So the hope is that as things start to reopen slowly, that you get that cascading effect of these businesses that move, then the next one falls, the next domino falls, and then it just really starts to ramp up. I guess that's everyone's hope in this. I think we can kiss the V goodbye as far as recovery. But I think if we get that U to come around, I think that's really is a potential. But it really kind of just depends on how fast things start picking back up.
I should mention too, and Julie pointed this out to me, and I forgot to mention it at the beginning, so I won't put her on the spot, but I see that she is still on. Lou Cook from the governor's office has been on the call, so she's been listening to some of the comments. So Lou, I like I said, don't want to put you on the spot. If you'd like to say hello to everyone, that's great. If not, that's fine too.
Yeah, one thing I would like to mention, and thank you, Wendy, and it's good to see everyone, and here's some familiar faces. The one thing we do have that opened up last week, well, actually Monday of last week, was our tech credentialing. So anybody that's looking to upscale any of their employees, this is a good time to do that. This grant period is open the entire part of June. You can go to techcred.ohio.gov. Take a look at that. There's over 700, almost 800 credentials. 400 of them you can take online. The thing that did get changed in the program during this pandemic situation was before you actually had to put the name of the employee in as you applied for the grant and what the training was. Right now, you just put the number of employees that will be taking that. So if you're pending bringing people back that will need training or hiring new people, you can actually pre-plan for that. And if anybody has any information, please contact me and I'll try and help you through that application. But it's out there to take advantage of. So we have that. And then we also have the small business grant that was announced last week. And then for the companies that have retooled for PPE, there's also money available for them for those two programs. Thank you, Wendy.
Yep. Thank you, Lou. Again, sorry that I didn't introduce you at the beginning. I apologize for that. It was on my script and I missed it. If there aren't any other questions, we are at the 10 o'clock hour. So again, thank you all for joining us. Please check the website for resources. Ohio Trucking Association, I'm sure, has plenty of resources and we'd be willing to speak with you. The Employers Association has a lot of great human resources that you can reach out to them. I can see Bob on the screen. Good morning, Bob. And again, reach out if you have questions to us, and we'll be happy to help you with that or point you in the right direction. And look for more information on the Transportation and Logistics Industry Sector Partnership that we want to restart in the coming months. So thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, everybody.